Well, hi, everybody. My name is Sandy Carter, and I am the SVP for Unstoppable Domains. And I am so excited to be here with you today to share a little bit about Web3, NFTs, and the Metaverse and how you might get started. You might be wondering about Unstoppable. Unstoppable Domains is a startup. We do digital identity, so an identity that travels with you throughout that Web3 Metaverse world. And we are very excited and so honored to just been named as Forbes 2022, one of America's best startups. So let's go ahead and jump into our conversation today. Hang on to your seats because we're going to have a lot of fun and hopefully a lot of questions and learnings as we go along. So before I did this presentation, I talked to over 400 different companies. I talked to CEOs and investors and entrepreneurs and skeptics of the space. And what I learned was a couple of things. One, whatever you call it, and people call it so many different things, blockchain, crypto, NFT, DeFi, Metaverse, Web3, it is real. And I'll show you real examples today. I also believe that you guys are in the forefront for learning because it will disrupt your company and probably your market here very shortly. And the last thing I originally had on here, it's going to create a lot of opportunity, but my daughter saw my slide and she goes, no, Mom, it's not a lot, it's a gazillion. So compliments on my daughter, it's going to create a gazillion opportunities. So I'm so glad you're here to learn about it because I do believe it's real, it's disruptive, and it's going to create so many opportunities. So before we get started, let's just define what Web3 is. Now, if you have to say one word about the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, that word would be ownership. Web 3 has this ownership model. It does combine a lot of things together around art, music, gaming, economics, and technology in a very interesting way. And let me show you what I mean by that. So early on, I was living in San Francisco, and that's where Uber started out. And I was one of the first to jump on the bandwagon, if you would, and try out Uber. And I thought, wow, what a great way to get around the city that I lived in. So I told all my friends in San Francisco, you've got to try Uber. So I attracted all of these new users to the concept. And then I told people in other cities. So as Uber expanded, I was helping them with getting new users. But when it came time to extract value from that Uber model, the value went to the company, $50 billion valuation, I think about today, that has come about. And while I did get some great pats on the back from my friends for recommending it, I didn't have true ownership in helping that company to be successful. And that's one of the big differences here. Back in Web 1, we were really consuming information, discovering information. But in Web 2, we weren't only discovering information, we were giving information. And that data was used by companies and they were making businesses off of that data, right? You know that people today sell your information for advertising. In the Web 3 world, though, you are not a user, you are a member. And therefore that data that you're accumulating, it comes to you. You own the data. And therefore you decide who and how you decide to share that information is totally up to you. So that's kind of the big difference between the two. So, people always ask me for one sentence to describe Web3, and I would say it's an open movement, and it's really meant to decentralize the internet. So, Web 2 was central with companies controlling and owning that data. But Web 3 is about decentralizing to where no one entity owns it, and you own your individual identity and your individual personal data. We'll go a little bit more into detail around this as well. So if you think about it, an NFT is a form of ownership. An NFT is a non-fungible token. A token, first of all, is a digital asset. So it's anything, a piece of music, a piece of art, a domain is an NFT as well. Non-fungible just means that you have a way to verify that it's yours. verify that it's real, and verify the ownership, hence non-fungible token. These are just 3 examples of some NFT art that I own. I also own NFTs that are domains, like sandy.crypto is also an NFT, as well as some music. So NFTs are really important, but I would say that today they're the shiny object that's getting a lot of attention as we move forward. And people are really confused about, why would anybody buy a digital representation of art? Well, if you think about it, today we do collect today. And I think that, in the future, we're going to be moving from consumers to collectors. So here on the left-hand side of this slide, you see a bunch of little candle holders. Those are called Glassy Babies. I used to work at Amazon Web Services, which is based in Seattle, and they have this hand-blown glass shop, and everybody in Seattle collects these candles. I hate to say it, but those on the left are actually in my house. In the middle, my mom once dated this famous baseball player. His name was Ted Williams. And so today, much to my father's chagrin, she collects those baseball cards. Now, those cards, as well as my Glassy Babies, not only is she collecting them, but she's verifying that they're real. I have another friend who collects Chanel purses. And of course, if you have to pay that much for a purse, you must verify that it is a real thing. And so today we're doing this today. And this is what an NFT is digitally. We're not just collecting it, but we're also validating the non-fungible piece of that. We're validating that it's a real asset owned by us. Now, of course, just like you could take a picture of one of those NFTs that I owned, you could take a picture of that baseball card or my Glassy Babies or even my friend's Chanel purse, but you wouldn't own it. You would still get to enjoy its beauty, but you would not have that ownership of it. And that's part of what we're talking about today, is the ownership model. Now, the third term I want to define, in addition to Web3 and NFTs, is the metaverse. And the metaverse is fascinating. In fact, I just got off of a panel on the metaverse. And the metaverse is where you're going to live, you're going to shop, you're going to work, you're going to interact, you're going to have fun, and you can do it from anywhere at any time. Imagine player one coming to life. That is what's going to happen. And as we grow in the metaverse, people are going to sell things. People will have jobs. People will even sleep in the metaverse. And this weekend, I tossed out an interesting question. What will the metaverse look like? Well, one of our partners is Atlantis, and they have imagined the metaverse as that world that would have existed had the Atlantis world or universe actually been real and not just written about in a book. And so you can enter into their metaverse and experience and live and work and play and have fun and buy outfits and skins in that particular world. Now, this weekend, I did post a question. I said, hey, what jobs do you think, since we're going to be playing and working and sleeping there, what jobs do you see is coming there? Well, these are some of the jobs that I've seen already in the metaverses that I've visited. Things like tour guides, or helping people advertise or get their brand placed, or lecturers, or storytellers, or sleep coaches, because some people want to sleep in the metaverse. I've also seen a group of avatars in the metaverse be police officers or security officers, smart contract lawyers, and even founders of companies that only exist inside of the metaverse. So these things are happening today. They are real, and they're where we need to see and go in the marketplace. However, I told you I didn't just look at and talk to all the people who were really positive on Web3. I also wanted to look at, what do we need to do to make Web3 very powerful? And so I like to say that we are in the dial-up phase of Web3 today. It's super early. There are all kinds of things that I'll go through in the presentation that we need to work on, like standards, for instance, user interface, and also the tech can be really expensive. For example, most Web3 is built on something called the blockchain, a type of technology. Well, when you put data on chain or on the blockchain, it's quite expensive. And so balancing between what's on chain and off chain today is pretty tricky. So as we go through this, you're going to think about some things that maybe aren't perfect, and that is okay. because we are early. We are in the dial-up phase of Web3 and where we are today. So then let's kind of go through a little bit about the flywheel that I see. Now, I told you that I used to work at Amazon Web Services. We build flywheels for everything, which is how the motion goes to where as you gain momentum, that there really is no stopping that flywheel. It just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. So if you think about today, we have a lot of early adopters who've jumped into this space, right? Whether it's crypto or Web3 or NFTs or Metaverse, people are jumping in early. As they jump in early, they're making money. And because they're making money and they're doing well, that's driving VC investment. In fact, I was just at a trade show and I had 62 requests to meet with different VCs and investors on the Web3 Metaverse space because they all want to put money in. Well, as they put money in, that means that more applications and more innovation happens, which drives more adoption, which just keeps that flywheel kind of going. So while we do have some problems today and some things we need to move through, we're in that early dial-up phase. This flywheel now is starting to spin and spin and spin. Now, I've thrown out a couple of different words to you today. And for me, I'm a very visual learner. So we wanted to really see, like, what does the stack really look like? Now, let me just pause. If you're a technologist, you're not going to like my architecture view, but it's basically accurate. It's just not down to all the detail. I want to start out with the two-sided marketplace that exists here. So on the left-hand side, you see this creator economy that's kicking up from a lot of those NFTs or music or domains, people creating on the platform, which is one of the great things I love about what we're doing. On the right-hand side, you see this digital network that's starting up, and the network is providing this multi-sided consumption model. So you've got the two-sided marketplace in place. In the center, you see kind of how I've laid out the layers of technology. Everything today is built on that blockchain, and that's what provides that trust and that secure ownership model that we talked about. Then comes Web3, and Web3 brings in decentralization as well as that digital identity, the self-sovereignty that exists. And then come DAOs, and DAOs are decentralized autonomous organizations. So they are an organization or a governance model where you have one person, one vote, one company, one vote, sometimes one token, a digital asset, one vote. And we see that they sit above Web3 and blockchain. In fact, many companies that I work with today don't have shareholders. They're actually DAOs. They're actually these decentralized autonomous organizations. And then on top of that is the metaverse. So if anybody ever asks you, oh, the metaverse is competing with Web3, you can say, no, the metaverse is a superset of what's happening underneath DAOs, Web3, and the blockchain. And then, of course, on top of that will be all these different interfaces. In fact, we were just talking about many of the interfaces where they need standards today, because you can't take a skin from one game and move it to another game because there are no standards as you move from one place to another. So I hope this helps you, because as a visual learner, this helps me kind of picture how everything fits together. Now, one of the goals of this presentation today was to get you to see how this ownership model, what it's dependent upon for Web3 and the metaverse to really deliver on its promise. And so I've done tons of research, and I really narrowed this down to 5 core areas. One is decentralization, which we'll talk about here in a second. The second is digital identity. 3 is built on blockchain. So that is the underpinning technology. 4 is community, and 5 is this financial freedom that comes from having that ownership model. You'll see at the bottom of the slide, I have all 5 of these being dependent, making sure that you need these 5 in order to demonstrate that real ownership model. So what I'd like to do now is walk you through each of these and why each of these is really important. So when we talk about decentralization, there are really 3 core elements of decentralization. The first one is the difference between a centralized model and a decentralized model. So in a centralized model, you'll see that there's someone at the center, at that spoke and hub. And that has implications in several regards. The first is that you've got one person that controls the technology. A decentralized model will hopefully really articulate a more stable environment over time because there's no single point of contact or failure. Imagine today if Amazon Web Services, the cloud goes down. Well, a lot of things come down, right? Because they're dependent on that center hub. The second thing, and not just in regards to technology, but is the contracting. If you have a centralized view, then you've got one person doing the contract. So imagine a decentralized view where you've got multiple people voting or are participating in a decision. We can think of a lawsuit most recently between Apple and Epic, where one person controlled the marketplace and another wanted to run by a set of what they considered fair rules, the difference between centralized and decentralized. If you think about it like Theta, a decentralized video platform, that issue that occurred in a centralized world did not exist in the decentralized world because there was no one person controlling the contract. It was voted upon by a DAO structure. And then if you think about centralized versus decentralization, you can think about the freedom that comes and the ability to create new services. In a centralized world, you have to get approval or permission for an API. In a decentralized world, anybody can build on top of anything. So take unstoppable domains. Our domains have superpowers, not just because they're built on the blockchain, but because anybody can leverage or use them with or without our permission. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, like some of the skeptics I talked about, but isn't Web3 today dependent on Web 1 and Web 2 technology? And yes, you would be right. And this is where I say that we're in that dial-up phase today. So Web3 is dependent today. In fact, for us, Unstoppable Domains, we run on top of Google Cloud, and others run on top of old Web 1 and Web 2 technology. But as our founder, Matt Gould, has said a couple of times, look, today we're early stages. So we're building on top of that prior technology, and that's okay. Eventually, the full goal will be imagined. So I like to say today we're kind of in that Web 2.5 or that hybrid web. You heard about hybrid cloud, that hybrid web, where you've got some pieces that are totally decentralized, like storage, but some pieces which still depend upon technology that we've built before. Okay, so we just talked about decentralization. The second area that we really want to focus in on is that digital identity. And digital identity is so important in Web3 because your digital identity travels with you. It's not stuck in one place or in one application. So let me just show you what that looks like. Again, a visual learner, right? So if you look at Web 2, today you sign into Google, you sign into Facebook, you sign into Twitter. And by doing that, a couple of things occur. One, you don't take your influence from one platform to another platform. You're kind of different people, different identities as you go across. The data that you put in is owned by that company, right? Facebook, for example, sells your data so that others can advertise to you. They own that data. And so in the Web 2 world, your identity doesn't travel with you. And in fact, I was just looking this weekend, I have over 280 passwords and user IDs that I use to sign into all kinds of different applications. Well, imagine the Web3 world now. Web3, you're going to connect your wallet to your identity, and there's going to be one identity, and you can use that identity for a DeFi app, for a game, for a metaverse. You take that data with you and you travel with that identity. You're not bound by a particular application because you are a member now. You're not a user. You are a member of what we're doing. So for example, with Unstoppable Domains, the company I work for, we have something called Humanity Check. And what Humanity Check does is not only do you link your email and your wallet to your identity, but you link to that identity yourself as a person. It verifies that you are one person to one identity. Now, I'm sure none of you do this today, but imagine for a retailer, if you could verify one person, one identity. Today, for example, if I get a coupon for a store I like, I can sign in with my Gmail email, can sign in with my Yahoo email, I can sign in with my Outlook email and get that coupon 3 times. In fact, retailers count on 20 to 40% fraud in those scenarios. With something like Humanity Check, where you have one person, one identity, that's eliminated, creating value for both the user, because now you decide when you want to give that information, and the company to be able to validate one person, one user as well. So as we think about that, there are endless possibilities. Imagine that I could store my educational records. My daughter just took some classes at a community college, and I'm trying to get those classes transferred to her real university. Well, I have to do snail mail, real mail. I have to send a fax. What if that was part of her identity, a digital identity, and that all of her certifications, all of her diplomas, everything that she's done could just travel with her? Or healthcare records. Imagine that. Like today, I moved from one city to another city. As I change doctors, I now have to get permission to get my data transferred from one doctor to another. Imagine if I already had that data and that data would just move with me. So there's so many possibilities. And in fact, someone just recently asked me, what's your favorite use case for digital identity? And I said, hasn't been created yet, because there are so many possibilities. So if you are a developer or if you're a entrepreneur out there today, get your mind going on this one, because it creates all kinds of interesting possibilities. Now, one of the big things though, again, remember I talked to 400 different companies and some of these were skeptics. The thing that we're lacking today are standards. So how do you ensure that forever that identity can be taken from one place to another? We need a set of standards that everybody follows so that everything that they do can be transferred one to another. And that's just not with digital identity. I think standards goes beyond just digital identity as well. Okay, so we talked about 2 elements of that ownership model, decentralization, as well as digital identity. Let's go into number 3 now, which is really the core or the backbone of Web3 and the metaverse. And that is the blockchain. I know some people are really nervous about the blockchain because they just don't technically understand it. And I'm probably going to go too high level for you guys here as developers. But at a high level, I wanted to walk through why blockchain is so fundamental in creating this trustless environment that's necessary for ownership in Web3 and the metaverse. So first of all, if you think about the blockchain, it is literally a chain of blocks. That's how it got its name. And each of those blocks stores information. So I like to imagine it kind of as a storage shed. Each of those storage sheds has all kinds of different information. The sheds aren't sharing information with each other, but they're connected. They're interoperable with each other as well. So if you think about the blockchain, it is run by a decentralized network, which qualifies it for Web3, which means that no single person can get access to your storage vault or your storage shed. Each of those chains are separated by this decentralized network. Typically, it also means that they have higher uptime and value as well. So if you think about the internet today, the way this works is that each company, whether it's Facebook or LinkedIn, they each have their own data, and those chains are stacked so that each company owns that particular set of data. But in the Web3 world, that changes completely. That data is put on that decentralized network. Each of the chains or the blocks are separated so that no one company has control. It's a completely different mindset as you move forward. So let's just think about it for a second. If you're going to give $10 to someone, let's just say you're going to transfer money to them. Typically, the way we do that today is there's some trusted party in between those two. Typically, that trusted party is a bank. They serve as that trusted and verified source as you transfer between 2 different parties. In Web3, that bank is replaced by the blockchain. And because that blockchain is decentralized, it ensures that you've got the right set of verification moving forward from one person to another. It also ensures that you don't have to wait for the bank to open. This is technology, so it's open 24/7. So if you kind of summarize it, it means that when you commit to pay someone, you leverage their private key and they sign it, which provides some verification through the blockchain. And because that chain is now verified, that data, that cash now goes to Bob, all done on that blockchain that provides the same level of signature and validation that in my first example would have been done by a bank. So in essence, if you think about why blockchain, blockchain is transparent. The data that goes on the chain is public and it's open source. So, in the past, we used to tell our kids, watch out what picture you post on Facebook because some recruiter will see it. Now people are saying, be careful which projects are on the chain because they are transparent. So if you vote for one project or you participate in something, that data can be seen by all. It also protects that user to have their ownership of their data. And the really great thing is it's interoperable. So you can move that data in between different applications. Now it is immutable, which means it can't be changed, and it is programmable as well. And these are all elements that ensure that you can have that ownership that exists today in the Web3 metaverse world. Okay, so we've covered 3 of the elements: decentralization, blockchain, as well as digital identity. Now let's go on to the 4th, which is not quite as technical. It's community-based. And so if you think about the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, you're going to think about a community. As an illustration, let me talk about a DAO. So a DAO is where a company has one person, one vote, one token, one vote, or one company, one vote. And what this does is it enables a community to make a decision. We see our DAOs popping up today to buy the US Constitution. I just spoke with a model this weekend. She's using a DAO to select her next collection of fashion. The DAO, the members are voting on it. It's one token, one vote. So you could actually buy more tokens if you really wanted to come in heavy on her next design. But you can also do this with financial transactions. We see it being done with real estate today, where a DAO will own a piece of property, or like a timeshare used to be. And it creates this community focus because you're all in it together and you're all voting on things in the same time frame. So the summary here is, in a community is the project and the project is the community. So let me just give you another example. Let's take Lazy Lions. Lazy Lions is an NFT collection. They're one of the top rated NFT collections. An NFT, again, is that non-fungible token. Well, the Lazy Lions have 5,000 members of their organization. And those 5,000 members create, not just review, their roadmap. This happens to be the Lazy Lion roadmap. Now, imagine a company. What a company does is they go get their developers and they design their roadmap, and then they reveal it to their customers and their partners. But in Web3, the community creates the roadmap, and then the community presents it to the rest of the community. They're all part of it together. They're all members in what's happening. So for example, here with the Lazy Lions, as they're doing an MBA partnership, or as they are building bungalows now, all of this was done with and by the community. So the big thing here is that in Web3, you are a member. You're not a user, you're a member now. And so that community comes with responsibility as well as, benefits as well. The interesting thing is, when people buy, let's say, a piece of music or a piece of fashion or a piece of art like the Lazy Lion, you're not just buying the digital asset, but you're also buying membership into that group and to the community with which you're part of. Okay, so now let's go on to our 5th area, which is around this financial ownership model as well that permeates. So if you think about it, I'm going to go back to my example of the Lazy Lion. I bought this Lazy Lion. Actually, it was part of my signing bonus. And when I did that, I became a member of the Lazy Lions. I'm not a user anymore. I'm a member of the Lazy Lions. And as such, I can now take that NFT anywhere. First of all, the NFT itself has value. So CryptoPunks and Bored Apes just merged together, 68 ETH and 73 ETH, they get a lot of financial value. But in addition, as you're looking at it, it's not just about the financial value of the NFT itself. Like here, you can see that Lazy Lions are a blue chip NFT collection. But what can I do with that? Well, I can take that lion, I can turn it into a tattoo. I can put it on a snowboard or a ski. I can paint it on the side of the wall. I can sell bobbleheads. All of that revenue and profit that comes in is mine because I own that Lazy Lion. So there is financial value that comes to the member of the community. Now, as you're thinking about this, I know there's probably many of you out there, as we went through these 5 things, let me just review them real quick again. Decentralization, digital identity, blockchain, community, and that financial freedom. So as you think about that, we do see a lot of Web2 brands starting to enter the Web3 space today. And that is really fascinating and extremely valuable. However, you can have a misstep because you're dealing with a community who are not users, but are members. And so we view as collaborating with typical Web3 companies or typical Web3 NFT collections to give the strongest value for a brand that comes into this world without having all the knowledge of the Web3 community. So then how do you guys get started? This is really where I wanted to end today. I have 3 kind of ways that I think that you can start. One is learning, and that's what you're doing today. You're listening to this lecture. At the end, I'll give you some other links for podcasts and YouTube videos and essays to read so that you can continue to learn. However, I think in the Web3 space, the most valuable way to learn is to play with the technology, not just to read about it, but to actually go into a metaverse, to actually go and buy crypto, and then interact with the communities that are out there. Primarily, they're on Discord, which most of us have a love-hate relationship with, and Telegram. And you can interact with those communities, ask questions. I got a question the other day. Am I too late, Sandy? I feel like I jumped into Web3 too late. I would say you are not too late. We're just getting started. It is that dial-up phase of Web3. So now is the perfect time for you to come in, learn about what's happening, and figure out how to get started. So as a user, as a consumer, the way that I would recommend that you get started is to go get a wallet, and there are many wallets out there, to buy some crypto. Now, I'm not giving you financial advice. So I'm not telling you to buy a lot. Buy a little bit just so that you can play with it. Go out and get that unstoppable domain, because what that enables you to do is to have a human interface that's on the blockchain for your wallet and then for your digital identity, and then mint it. And all minting does is minting just ensures that you have that ownership of that domain and it makes it yours. So minting is like that verification stamp that you would get that verifies that what you have is yours. So as a consumer, again, I would suggest that you go out and buy a wallet, get a wallet, buy some crypto, get a domain from Unstoppable, and mint that domain so that that kind of seals up what you're doing, because that enables you now to play in the Web3 world. As I was doing this presentation before I went to a big conference that I was just at, I asked a lot of the attendees, what else do you want to hear from me, like about what is Web3 and how you might use it? They asked me for some use cases for the business side too. And so I've been thinking about these use cases. I'm going to share 10 of them here with you today. I have collected right now a list of about 57 use cases for business. So as developers here in DevCon, this might be an interesting place for you to start thinking about what you might develop and what you might create. So 2 use cases here for B2B, Decentralized and Sandbox are both gaming metaverse platforms. So if you're a consumer brand, one of the things you can think about is do I create a virtual element of what I sell in the real world? And do I place it in one of these metaverses or one of these games so that people could potentially buy it or see it as advertising? For example, for Decentraland, I just started something called Unstoppable Women of Web3 to ensure we have a lot of diverse voices in this new space. Decentraland gave me a piece of land, and we're going to build a headquarters inside of Decentraland for women of Web3. Now, how powerful is that? We're going to have a headquarters inside of Decentraland. Maybe you want to consider doing that. Maybe your first development project is to go in and build a mini headquarters for your company inside of Decentraland and play around with it, see how it works, see what's happening. Today, I participated in one of the pre-events for a decentralized fashion show. I know that India is amazing with fashion. I bought a pair of virtual earrings. I don't know why I'm touching them because I don't have them on, but those virtual earrings will be demonstrated inside of the fashion show. But because I bought the virtual earrings, I can now buy them in real life as well. So that's another experiment, put something in the virtual world and then also make it available in real life as well to test that out. Other things you can play with is there are all kinds of conferences today that you present in the metaverse. This is one example of I was just doing a trial, doing a speaking engagement inside of the metaverse, seeing how people learned and how did they interact? What did they like about what I did? Another great learning example. And of course, I promised you 10 others. There's 10 great things that you can do as a developer. Create a DApp, a decentralized application versus an application, just to play around with the concept of decentralization. Build that on the blockchain. Pay in crypto. There's a company I talked to last week that is now offering their employees to pay them in crypto, a percentage, or pay them in real money. You can create an SLA. Let's say you have an SLA for how you support your customers. Create an SLA with a smart contract built on the blockchain. Present in the metaverse, build a headquarters in the metaverse. This is an interesting one that I just came across. Some people are using Web3 games and that gamification to do training for their employees. So they're not only teaching them about Web3, but they're also teaching them basics about what they're doing as well. There's so many possibilities here for developers as well as entrepreneurs in this space. Now, one of the last things I wanted to talk to you about is as we build the space, we want the space to be incredibly diverse. We all know all the numbers. McKinsey just published that when you have a diverse team, when you have different trains of thought, different thought processes, then you get more innovation. And I will tell you, at one of my companies, we were looking at different innovation coming out of different teams. As we looked at one team, they were you looked at them, they would be very diverse, gender-wise, racial-wise. You just looked at them and you're like, that is a diverse team. But they weren't producing a lot of innovation, and we couldn't understand that. Well, it turned out that that entire team was hired from one particular school. And so they didn't have that diversity of thought. So when I'm speaking about diversity, get a lot of different ideas coming in, different ages, different types of companies, and that innovation will really be spurred as you move forward. We have kicked off Women of Web3. It's called Unstoppable Women of Web3. And we're taking different companies who want to commit to educating that next generation of men and women as they move forward. So if you're interested in this, our website is unstoppablewow3.com. You can go out there and join us in that mission as well. Okay, so our last slide that I have is a slide based on one of my favorite sports. Unfortunately, it's not cricket, but it is basketball. And I grew up with basketball, played basketball. My brothers played basketball. And so one of the quotes that I love from basketball is a quote about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was one of the all-star basketball players of all time. And one of the rookies who played for the first year in the NBA, his name was Stacey King. And Stacey King said, I will always remember this as the night that Michael Jordan and I combined to score 70 points. Stacey King scored 1 point and Michael Jordan scored 69. The reason that I leave you with this particular quote is that in Web3 world, it's so new. There really aren't any experts today. In fact, a lot of people who are teaching it have only been in it for 9 months to a year. So ask a lot of questions. I would love to have you continue to ask me questions via social media. Ask questions, start to learn, make sure you get your hands dirty, experiment with either those B2B use cases or as a consumer, and then interact, get into a Discord. For example, the Lazy Lion Discord, anybody can join. You don't actually have to own a Lazy Lion. You can get in there and ask all kinds of questions and learn about the terrain, or jump on Telegram. I do most of my business with my partners through Telegram and have a really big impact that way. Thank you so much, DevCon, for having me speak today. I hope that this presentation was helpful as kind of your first stop in that Web3 world. As a reminder, we just went through those 5 elements: decentralization, digital identity, which we view as crucial, blockchain, community, as well as that whole area of financial freedom that leads to that ownership. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you in the Metaverse.